Good day, teachers. Good day, Dr. Cuenca. I'm Eliza Jane C. Balmeyo, and I will be reporting to you about an overview to ethical theory about deontological ethics and social contract theory. So, our lesson objectives for today is we will be able to understand the foundational principle of deontological ethics and social contract theory, including their historical context and key proponents, and also we will analyze the key differences and similarities between these two ethical theories. So, and also we will apply these theories to contemporary ethical dilemmas to evaluate their practical implication in decision making. So, let's move on. So, first topic is deontological ethics. So, deontological ethics, the word deontological, it is come from the Greek word deon, which means duty. And deontological ethics, it is one of the three major theories of narrative ethics, along with virtue ethics and consequentialism. And also, deontological ethics is closely associated with Immanuel Kant. As you can see in our PPT or presentation right now, makikita niyo yung picture ni Immanuel Kant dyan. Sa tapat ni Immanuel Kant, meron dyan mga words which is don't lie, don't steal, and don't cheat. Yun yung mga pinaniniwalaan ni Immanuel Kant na nakakonekta rin ngayon sa ating deontological ethics. So, ano nga ba yung meaning ng deontological ethics? So, deontological ethics, it argues about the morality. It is the rightness or wrongness of human act. It depends on whether such act fulfill a duty or not, rather than on its consequence. So, sa madaling salita, deontological ethics ay meron na tayong mga action. Some might right and wrong in themselves regardless of their consequences. So, may mga ginagawa tayong tama at mali. So, it is our duty to do the right ones and avoid the wrong ones. So, for example na po agad tayo kasi madali naman po natin intindihin yan, di po ba? Yung tama at mali. So, example ng ating deontological ethics ay, people have the obligation to tell the truth even if doing it so might produce some unfavorable results. So, ano ba yung example ng mga unfavorable result? So, kunyari, tayo ay isang doctor. For example, we are a doctor and we have a patient na nagpa-check up lang sa atin. And we find out na meron siyang cancer, stage 4 cancer. So, hindi mo masabi sa kanya knowing na meron siyang sakit sa puso. So, doon na tayo papasok. Ano ba yung dapat nating gawin? Ano ba yung dapat mong gawin as a doctor? Sasabihin mo ba sa kanya? Or hindi mo sasabihin sa kanya? If we question sa point of view na consequentialism ethics, the best decision is to lie and tell the truth to her family. Pag consequentialism ethics daw or consequentialist, ang tatanungin natin, mas maganda daw, mas better daw na magsinungaling. Pero, dito sa deontological ethics, the best decision is to tell the truth. Even if na alam natin ang possible na mangyari sa kanya, ay, ang reaction niya ay pwede magkaroon ng heart attack or mamatay. Why? Kasi, kung tatanungin natin si Immanuel Kant, mas gusto ni Immanuel Kant na telling the truth is always right, even if na magkakaroon to ng unfavorable result. So, ang contrary naman nito sa deontological ethics, ang pagsasabi ng mali ay ang pagsabi ng hindi totoo ay mali. So, parehas na ni Immanuel Kant na telling the truth is always right. So, ganoon din sa deontological ethics natin. Kailangan natin sabihin yung totoo kahit na merong consequences na magaganap. It's either positive or negative. Therefore, in deontological ethics, we consider first which action are right and wrong before we take before making any moral decision. Ano po? So meron din dito sa aking mga nabasa, sabi dito, if an action is right itself, then we have the moral to do it. Whereas, if an action is wrong naman, sabi dito na we have the moral duty to act accordingly. So, yung example natin kanina, di ba? alam nating tama, pero moral duty natin na sabihin sa kanya yung totoo kahit na alam natin na yung magiging action natin ay magkakaroon ng negative. Okay, yun yung ating deontological ethics. So, let's move on to social contract theory. So, sa social contract theory, most of the ruler claim that the right to rule ay nanggagaling daw sa tinatawag nilang divine right of king. So, bago pa mabuo si social contract theory, naniniwala sila na yung power nila to rule ay nanggagaling daw sa itaas or kay God. So, yung mga tao nun ay mas nagiging more religious na sumusunod sa kanila. Hindi na nila kino-question pa yung enlightenment. So, however, may mga taong nag-develop ng mga pananaw na to, kaya nabuo natin ang social contract theory. So, itong social contract theory, ito yung relationship between people in the government, the right to rule, how much freedom ang bibigay natin or give up natin to our governments para sumunod sa mga rules and securities and protection na ibibigay nila. So, dito sa ating presentation, makikita nyo yung tatlong person dyan. I know may kilala na kayo dyan, familiar sa inyo. So, when it comes to human nature in social contract theory, we're gonna be looking for 3 social contract philosophers, which is si Thomas Hobbes, si Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and si John Locke. So, in looking in Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau, we are going from 3 views of human nature. We have that are progressively going from negative and positive point of view. And the reason why it is important, it is because it sets up the rest of each of these in social contract philosophy. So may malaking impact nila, okay? So, starting with Thomas Hobbes. Si Thomas Hobbes, as pinaniniwalaan niya na humans are certain destroy each other of sovereign authority. So, sabi niya dito, he's looking that human beings are naturally contentious, that we were just basically born, and it's like we're somebody I can kill. So, naniniwala siya na, sa sinasabi niya na humans are certain to destroy each other of sovereign authorities, mas gusto niya magkaroon na need natin ng sovereign authority or independent people, the power, somebody na powerful to para magkaroon tayo ng security and protection. But, the people should give up, yun yung word, willingly give up their freedom to the authority for the exchange ng kanilang security and protection. So, yun yung kay Thomas Hobbes. Papayag ba tayo na i-give up natin yung freedom natin para lang magkaroon tayo ng protection and security? So, ito naman, kaya nagkaroon naman ng pananaw dito si John Locke. So, alam ko naman na familiar tayo kay John Locke, which is, kabisado natin siya nakilala siya sa kanyang tabula rasa or blank slate, which, syempre, theory of knowledge. So, mananawalaan niya na we're basically born like computer without an operating system. When we say operating system, ito yung mga kumokontrol sa atin, iOS software, para tayo ay gumana, para tayo ay maging functional. So, dito sa kay John Locke, so sabi niya dito, Locke sees us being able to live accordingly to the rules. So, meron tayong dapat daw, government that only governs with consent from the people. Kasi naniniwala si John Locke na yung mga tao, mayroon tayong freedom to choose our leader, to elect our leader. Meron tayong freedom para tayo magkaroon ng mga leader. So, Locke believe in representative democracy. Take note, si Locke po ay naniniwala sa representative democracy. Itong representative democracy na to ay people elect representative that makes law and govern on their behalf. So, knowing now we're making rational decisions to select good leaders, and those leaders are going to act rationally to make good laws that are going to protect those freedom of ours. So, pag may mga laws tayo, may freedom pa din naman tayo. Freedom to live, freedom of everything, may freedom pa rin tayo. Pero may mga laws na tayo, may mga boundaries na tayo. Furthermore, pag nakita natin na yung mga leaders ay hindi nakakatulong, mayroon tayong power, tayong mga tao na i-overthrow natin sila. In what form? In a form of revolution. But more commonly, we see this form of election in liberal democracies in all over the world. So may mga nakaroon tayo ng elections, minsan revolution, dati di ba nagkaroon tayo ng revolution, but likely ngayong panahon natin ay nakaka-elect tayo ng mga right person na sa tingin natin ay makakatulong sa atin through election. So, kay Jean-Jacques Rousseau naman, he believed that all these freedom and societies of luck world would create, especially lead to corruption, distractions, na sinabi nga ni Hobbes na magkakaroon ng distraction, di ba kay Hobbes, dahil mag-aaway-aaway nga, kailangan natin ng mga tao na ibibigay natin yung freedom natin, bibigay natin para magkaroon tayo ng protection. So, kay Locke naman, magkakaroon tayo ng leader na i-elect natin para gumawa ng batas, na ang sa tingin ni Jean-Jacques Rousseau ay magkakaroon to or mag-lead naman ito into corruption. Pinaniniwalaan, pero ano yung pinaniniwalaan ni Jean-Jacques Rousseau? Ang pinaniniwalaan ni Jean-Jacques Rousseau ay majority will. Okay? Wala tayong leader. Tayong mga tao ang gumagawa ng law. Tayo mismo, wala tayong leader. Lahat tayo gagawa. Then, kung alin yung pagkakasunduan ng lahat, kung alin yung pinakamaraming boto sa lahat, yun yung masusunod. So, yun yung pananaw ni Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Meron tayong karapatang lahat. Okay? Meron tayong majority. Okay? Merong mga law na kahit kagandahan, hindi napapatupad dahil sa majority. Yun yung pananaw ni Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Dahil general will, sabi niya, this yield a compassionate and benevolent result. So, if we compare those three philosophers sa social contract, kay Thomas Hobbes, ang pinakamadali dyan ay need authority to ensure security. Kay Thomas Hobbes. Kay John Locke naman, we need government to rule us, but in the consent of people. Para tayo ma-protect sa ating life, liberty, and our property. Then, next kay Jean-Jacques Rousseau naman, ay sabi niya, people surrender themselves to the general will. So, may general will. Kasi pinaniniwalaan ni J.J. Rousseau, meron siyang sinabi na, man is born free, but everywhere is in chains. Kaya sabi niya, dahil nga syempre, pag kay John Locke, meron tayong government. Kay Thomas Hobbes, may authority tayo or powerful person na hahawak sa atin. Kaya parang may limitation pa din tayo. So, kay Jean-Jacques Rousseau naman, people surrender themselves to the general will. Kung alin yung magiging general will or mapagkakasunduan lahat, yun yung gagawin natin. So, yan yung sa social contract theory. Meron tayong people and sovereign authority. Meron tayong mga batas na dapat nating susundin. Meron pa tayo dito ang assessment. So, for our assessment, meron tayo ditong 2 question for deontological and 2 question for our social contract theory. So, let's move on to... So, maliwanag po ba yung discussion natin sa dalawang topics, sa deontological ethics at sa ating social contract theory? So, kung maliwanag na po ang lahat, meron po akong hinanda sa inyo ditong short clip or short video na inyong papanoorin. Yun lang po. Thank you for watching and enjoy watching. Thank you.
Son of the former Philippines dictator Ferdinand Marcos has secured an unassailable landslide victory in the presidential election. With more than 90% of the votes counted, he's won more than half of the votes. His main rival, the outgoing Vice President Leni Rodrigo, called on Filipinos to respect the outcome. But the vote has been marred by reports of nearly 2,000 malfunctioning counting machines, leaving many people questioning the integrity of the vote, as Howard Johnson reports.
Hindi naman po tayo naghahanap.
Philippine history is turning on its head.
People power has taken over his beloved...
Once a disgraced family ousted from the presidential palace in 1986 amidst charges of corruption and brutality, the Marcos family looks set to return with the people's backing. This was Bongbong Marcos earlier, casting his vote in his father, Ferdinand Marcos's hometown. He was joined by his son, Sandro. The 27-year-old is running for Congress. And this, a rare appearance of 92-year-old mother, Imelda, once a byword for greed because of her excessive collection of designer shoes, bankrolled by the taxpayer. The Marcoses now promise a return to a golden age of economic prosperity, but critics say they've used social media to whitewash the sins of their past. The only person standing in the way of a Marcos revival is Leni Robredo, a human rights lawyer and economist, but she's well behind in the unofficial tally of results. But this year's election has been marred by reports of vote buying, violent skirmishes and malfunctioning counting machines.
You can see there are some tensions in this polling station. That's because people have been waiting for hours to feed their ballot papers into this machine here, which has been malfunctioning now for 6 hours. And people are being told here to leave their papers to be fed in later on. But because of the lack of trust, perhaps, people want to wait to see their paper go through so they can get an official receipt.
It's dodgy. All I want is the truth. I almost collapsed earlier.
The Philippine Election Commission say more than 1,800 machines malfunctioned, but the body failed to heed calls to extend polling hours. It's left many questioning the integrity of this election. Supporters of the Marcos family say they deserve a second chance, but the results will shock the world. Crimes proven by court documents, whistleblower accounts and independent media reporting seemingly mean little to the majority here. Howard Johnson, BBC News, Manila.